Devices not connected. They will need to connect their mic and cam before you can add them to the stream. So do you have that thing from me?
Yeah, I'm actually on the link. I can see you on my phone through the link. It says I'm backstage, so I don't need to be on the phone with you, I don't think, at the same time.
No.
I can see you pointing at me.
Okay, they need to connect their mic. Ban from studio, kick from studio. I need you to do something to connect stuff, so I'll hang up. You try to connect.
Okay, we'll do.
All right, bye. We're having some technical difficulties trying to figure this out. New format in a new area. And there's Mr. Ben.
I couldn't be on a phone call with you and on the live stream at the same time.
Oh, now come on.
I mean, phones can do a lot, but apparently they can't do everything.
Try to get us both in here. Well, you're our inaugural guest.
Well, that makes me honored.
And so I am going to pull up my questions here to you. But before we do anything, why don't you go ahead and tell the people who you are and who you work with?
Sure. So my name's Ben Myers. I am the regional accounts manager for Indiana and Kentucky at Microbiome Labs. Microbiome Labs is a supplement probiotic nutraceutical company that focuses on having clinically proven end products that are focused on root cause problems in the gut. So we have a big belief in if you can fix the balance and resiliency of the gut, then a lot of your other problems downstream will fix themselves. And we do that by coming up with products that clinically proven to do so. Absolutely love it. I've just started with this company in February, but I've had a big passion for the gut for a long time.
Well, and why don't you go into that? What your experience with the gut and what product you actually use and how that has changed your experience and changed your health.
Sure. So believe it or not, I was a liquor rep for 10 years out of college. And I thought that was the best job in the world because I got paid to drink. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. I'm in my 20s and I'm getting paid to drink. And then I hit my 30s and I realized this was really bad. Fast food every day and stressed out lifestyle and bad sleep and excessive alcohol is horrible for you. But luckily, I got on the liquor and I found, or a company found me called Interrogam or Terra Health with a product to launch in Indiana called Interrogam, which was the first FDA approved medical food for IBS-D, ulcerative colitis, and Crohn's disease. It was an oral IgG. And I blew my mind because I had IBS-D for a decade. I had lots of health problems that had been building up from that past experience of being the liquor rep, and they just compounded and compounded and compounded. One ended up having the other. Taking the medications for one made other symptoms and other problems. And so I was a prime example of basically just bad lifestyle and bad lifestyle choices leading to being on all kinds of compounded medications for multiple different conditions. Oral IgG is immunoglobulins you take orally that grab onto pathogens and pull them out through your gut. I was, in fact, talking to gastroenterologists and colorectal surgeons 10 years ago about leaky gut when that was a bad word to say anywhere near a hospital. And was trying to convince people that if you could end the enteropathy and end leaky gut, then you could actually stop downstream effects. And the product I had shown it clinically done it. Unfortunately, it had insurance problems because it wasn't covered by Medicare because medical foods can't be. And then I ended up back into regular sales. And then a company called me up and said, hey, my old manager called me up and said, hey, this company I just did the formulation with, do you want to go back and sell Interrogam again? And I said, really? That literally helped me out so much because since going on that, I had, in fact, healed my leaky gut. And as a result, had no longer taking Restasis for chronic dry eye. I was no longer taking PPIs for GERD. I was no longer taking antibiotics for my IBS-D. I was no longer taking all these other things because I'd fixed the actual problem behind all of those things, which is I had a leaky gut. And once that fixed, everything else started to fall into place. And so my old manager, to jump back, my manager said, well, hey, we actually have a supplemental dosage that I just formulated for this company called Microbiome Labs. It's the exact same thing that the medical food, the FDA, the doctors and gastroenterologists are using, except instead of 5 grams, it's 2 grams. And I went, sign me up. And I got to know who this company, Microbiome Labs, was. And they were doing a lot of what the Interrogame was doing as well. They wanted to put all their stuff through the exact same clinical trials that drug manufacturers do to show doctors and to show practitioners that you can rely on these results over and over and over and over. And that just not been done. The nice part was they also were the huge innovators. So I don't have to go out there and try to sell somebody a different zinc or a different calcium. All of our products are focused towards, I can walk into an office and say, here's a tool you didn't have before. We did a lot of research. We spent a lot of money. We've actually clinically proven it works. You can do this one time, or you can do it 10 times, or you can do it 1,000 times. Your results are going to be the same over and over. I love that. I loved that. The other thing I got to learn from them, because if I'd never gotten this job, I wouldn't know, was how to actually improve the resiliency and the balance of your gut. I was of the old mindset where I was taking my Interrogame still regularly to pull those toxins out that were causing the damage to my gut lining. But I didn't realize you could actually change the composition of your microbiome itself. And that's what Megaspore Biotic does. It had clinically proven that instead of just taking things to supplement what I thought I was missing in my gut and just taking those all the time for the rest of my life, because for some reason my body doesn't have enough of that in it, I could actually go through and change what that composition was by using specific things that nature intended to do that.
Well, let's take 1 second there and let's speak to that point of what causes leaky gut. So let's take a moment and explain to people that inside the gut, you have a slime layer. This is known as
The mucosa. Yeah.
SIG-A, the mucosal layer. And then below that slime layer, you have these tight junctions. And the tight junctions are the only thing, and this is 1 cell layer thick.
Thinner than a human hair.
Yes. And that's the only thing that keeps the stuff that's in the stomach out of the bloodstream. So he was having IBS, irritable bowel syndrome D, which is diarrhea. There's also IBS C. So depending on what your genome is like, you will either express this leaky gut as a D or a C. Still can have the same root cause. It's just how you're wired to express. And you were taking a supplemental form of IgG to bind to lipopolysaccharides to pull them out of the body. And that's what helped him with the IBSD. And so, did I miss anything there?
No, the main point of action, just to make people be able to visualize this, you have IgGs throughout your whole body. They do the same thing. The idea of taking them orally is when they come through and they bind on and neutralize things, just like they do everywhere else in your body, but they're doing in the gut, they're physically too big to get through that tight junction layer he was talking about. They simply do not fit through the gaps. So when they don't fit through the gaps, you don't get the body's response to them fitting through the gaps. That's kind of the
immune response.
Yeah, your immune system basically says, wait, like you're saying, you've got these tight junctions like a fence row, and when something gets through the fence, your body then says, this isn't supposed to be here. I'm going to have this response. And when it's happening over and over, it's an autoimmune response and causes the things lots of problems.
And so back to you with the Megaspore. What we're starting to see now is the microbiome, which we actually test through we do a microbiome assessment that is a PCR assessment through Microbiome Labs. And what we're seeing is we can change that, and he has gone through the process of starting to bring back using prebiotics, probiotics, postbiotics, fiber, diet, bringing all of that in to rehab his gut and allow the environment. So it's like setting the table or tending your garden, however, whatever analogy you want to make to that, or euphemism, but you have to make the environment acceptable to things like Akkermansia, things like Faecobacterium prodnutii, and all these weird names. But you have to set the environment up so that they can come back out. And he has gone through this, so that's how he's talking about changing his
Yeah,
microbiome.
there's really twofold. There's two things that in our society today that just simply wasn't a big deal 50, 100,000 years ago. All these stressors and risk factors and chemicals and things like that coming in through your body can disrupt that microbiome. The foods we eat, the way we've changed the foods we eat, there's lots of different just causes. But what the end result ends up being is, one, we have permeability in our guts. That happens over time. It happens because the composition, what's in our guts, is not correct. So that breaks down, like he was saying, that mucosal layer, and those tight junctions open up, and stuff, whether it's food particles or bacteria or protists or pathogens, get through that gut layer and get into the rest of your body and cause immune responses. Those immune responses are the symptoms that you go in and tell your doctor about. I have itchy skin, I have rashes, I have dry eye, I have diarrhea. I have those are the symptoms from stuff getting through. The other thing is we now have the ability to go through and look at that microbiome, which we never did before, and see what is out of whack. So a healthy gut, inside your gut from your stomach all the way to your anus, should have a specific garden makeup. So much of this and so much of this and so much of this. And when you've got trillions and trillions and trillions of bacteria inside your gut, you actually have about 3 to 5 pounds more bacteria in your gut than you have human cells in the rest of your body. And the ratio of all of those things in conjunction with each other make up an environment. When that environment gets out of whack, you get too much bad stuff compared to too much good stuff. Real simple way to say it. It breaks down that mucin layer and causes that gut barrier to become permeable. What we've all never been able to do before here just recently is be able to give a test, and Dr. Miller uses this, which actually goes through and looks and sees exactly what's in there. And then you can actually go through and track, let's get this environment back to a healthier environment. Because there's no more, in my opinion at least, there's no more pathogens or parasites or bad bacteria or viruses really than there has been entire humankind. But we're having a big influx of the amount of people that are getting sick from these things and the amount of autoimmune diseases that are coming around. And in my opinion, and in Microbiome Labs' opinion, the big problem with that is because the makeup inside of our gut is not resilient enough to fight those off. So lots of regular doctors you would go see at the doctor's office would say, hey, let's go find out what parasites you have in you and then give you antibiotics to kill those. But those antibiotics kill off everything else good inside your body. What Microbiome Labs and what a lot of functional medicine doctors practitioners like to look at is, how can we make this gut more resilient so it fights off these pathogens themselves, and my patient doesn't have to come see me every time he comes in contact with one? Because a healthy human in gut and a healthy human inside and out will fight these things off naturally, at least the majority of the time.
And so each of the bacteria that you have in your gut will produce short chain fatty acids. It'll produce butyrate. It'll do all of these different things that your body by itself might not even do on its own. They have discovered a species of bacteria that actually produces omega-3 fatty acids in us. So we don't actually produce omega-3 fatty acids endogenously. That's why they're known as an essential fatty acid. We don't produce those, but there are bacteria that can do that inside of us. And that's what all of this is about. It's about starting to balance that and fixing all the little things that are wrong within us, so that this is a balancing act. And you want H. pylori in the system. You just don't want too much. You want Clostridium difficile in the system. You just don't want too much. And it's that balancing act that Microbiome Labs actually helps us do. I was just looking at the HU58, and my next patients that come in with taking antibiotics, people can actually take this at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll let you explain the mechanism of action to people, how that actually works in people when they're taking antibiotics.
So antibiotics or antimicrobials in general, whether they're natural or not, kill off bacteria. That's what they're antimicrobials. They're killing off microbials. You take those because the doctor thinks you've got a virus or a pathogen or something that they're wanting to kill off. It's doing a lot of damage. The problem with most probiotics is they get killed off with antibiotics as well. With spore-based probiotics, HU58 is the name of a Bacillus subtilis species and strain that we've patented and did clinical research on. It's also one of the strains in Megaspore Biotic as well.
Let's clear one thing up real fast.
Sure.
When people are talking about probiotics and you're looking at research about probiotics, this is something that you have to know this as a customer.
Yes.
All probiotics are not created equal. It is done. How is the research done, Ben, so they understand this?
So research can be done lots of different ways. The most effective way, the most scientifically, I guess, or scientifically sound way to do it is do double-blind, placebo-controlled, randomized clinical trials. It's the same thing that the FDA requires of drug companies. That's what we do on ours. Now, it's very specific to know when you're looking through taxonomy, just to take a step back, there's kingdoms, phylums, families, all the way down to species and strain. Me, Travis, Jessica, we're all of the human species, but we're all definitely different people because you've got, as you go down taxonomy the same way. Bacteria is a live living thing. It goes through taxonomy the same. So when you look on the back of a bottle, and I'll pull up here just for instance. Here.
I got it. There we go.
Okay.
Oh,
the back of any, when a clinical trial is done, you're required to do that clinical trial with a specific strain. Because I always like to give this analogy that the Indiana Pacers have 5 great starters on their team. They're all humans. They're all individual people. If they go out and win the championship, you can't pick 5 other random humans and expect them to do the exact same thing because they're all different people. We're all the same species, but we're different people. Bacteria is the same way. If you go out and you say all of species cannot all do the same thing because they're all different strains underneath it. So when you're looking at when you're buying probiotics or any kind of thing that has to do with living, you want to look on the back. You'll usually see 2 or 3 letters and then 1, 2, 3, 4 numbers. So like HU58 is Hollandaise University strain number 58. So when we did our clinical trials, we did it on Hollandaise University strain 58 of Bacillus subtilis. What that tells us is what that exact person can do. Just like that's what Jermaine O'Neal or LeBron James or whatever, that's what they can do. For another company to go out and then say, well, we've got something of the same species. They're both humans. And since that, then they should all be able to do the same thing. We just know in nature, that's not the same. That's just not the way things work. So when you're buying probiotics, you're buying anything that has to do with a living organism like that, and you're looking at clinical trials, you want to make sure you're buying the product that was actually tested. A lot of things, what people don't realize, they'll go to local drugstores or package stores or grocery stores, and they'll look at the back and they'll see, well, this has the same name on the back of it as the one my doctor told me to get. Well, the reason your doctor told you to get that specific one is he's seen the clinical trials that were done on a specific strain. What the people manufacturing the product that you're probably about to purchase saw that as well and said, well, I can go buy that species for dirt cheap, somewhere around the world and put it inside a bottle and then say it should do the same thing because it has the same name, even though it's not the same exact strain. And that's a huge thing to remember. That's why when your practitioner tells you to get a specific product, he's seen the research from that company and knows what that product is supposed to do. but it's not necessarily going to do something if you go just over to a store and say, well, it's got similar names, so I'm going to assume it's going to do the same thing. It's a lot cheaper. I'm going to go that route. It's unfortunately just not the way it works. Is that,
Well, they
I
haven't
know I
done the
kind of jumped
research.
around, but
Well, that's very. I mean, it's interesting because they haven't done the research,
mhm.
and they're trying to take advantage of somebody else who has done the research. But luckily, there are protections in place that allow you guys to say, "Hey, this is our research. This is our strain. This is what it does."
Mm.
And so, it's very, very. It's interesting and it's nice in that it does protect you guys. Just real quick, because I've had you here for about 20 minutes and I know you're a busy, busy man.
Mm.
Um, what, okay, we're not talking about clinical studies here. I want to
Mm.
make this very clear to people. At this point in time, we're going to talk about anecdotal evidence.
Mm.
What have you seen? Because you work with a lot of doctors like
Mm.
me. What have you seen and what are some of the things that you were like, I don't think that'll work? And then you're like, I'll be that worked. What have you seen out there?
um, I have not seen a lot of in clinic, and I don't know whether I'm allowed to talk anecdotal very much since I am a representative from a company. I will say this anecdotally, I have not taken Restasis for my chronic dry eye since I got my gut in check. Chronic dry eye is by its name a chronic condition. It is an autoimmune condition, and literally I have not taken the drug. Now, if I go off my typical routine of keeping my gut in check and let gut permeability get back out of things and my microbiome go back out, my chronic dry eye, I start testing for it. I start testing positive for it again. But I literally do not even test to have chronic dry eye when I keep my gut in check.
How do they
That's
test for that?
they do a little. It's a little orange substance they pop in your eye, and however somehow if it gets absorbed, because chronic dry eye is an absorption problem. It's your eye thinking it has too much fluid, so it won't absorb the fluid. It pushes it out. And so if it's something with the way it absorbs this specific fluid, and don't ask me, I'm not an optometrist, but my optometrist literally had been taking oral IgG for as well. I was actually, this is a great story. I actually went to her because I couldn't afford the Restasis and I was so sick of taking it while I was an Interrogam salesperson. And I was asking her how long I could go before I had to start taking it again because it was about $1,200 a month. And I
It's
was like, I just can't afford it because I had switched insurances and I had this gap period. And I was like, how far can I stretch this before I have to go back? And she was like, then it should have came back in 3 days, 2 maybe. She's like, how is your eyes not itching? How long's it been? I'm like, well, it's been 2 months. So she retested me. She was like, well, Ben, you're not testing positive for chronic dry eye. Let me look at your chart. So she went there and looked at her chart. She's like, Interrogam. She's like, I take that for my ulcerative colitis. And I was like, really? Who's your doctor? We started talking, and I know her doctor. Her doctor was using it, Interrogam, for ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, which was a colorectal surgeon at St. Francis Hospital. And I talked her to doing it. She's like, they never went through the mechanism of action. So I went through and told her exactly what it was. And she's like, well, Ben, that's the problem. She's like, chronic dry eye is an absorption problem that's autoimmune. That's a downriver from your body not understanding how to absorb things correctly because of malabsorption farther down the street. She was like, holy crap. So she was at chronic dry eye as well. She stopped taking it just because she was taking the Interrogam. All of a sudden, she's like, holy crap. I don't test positive for chronic dry eye anymore. She'd had chronic dry eye for like 15 years. So we were both kind of jumping up and down, and we were like, oh, holy crap, we didn't even know we didn't have to take this product anymore. So we've both been all kinds of excited because we literally had been, I don't know if you know Restasis, it's like dropping jalapeno juice in your eyes twice a day, every day for the rest of your life. It is after 4 or 5 years. Oh my goodness, I was so happy I don't have to do that anymore. And it's the only drug out there. It's the only thing for it. It's so low patented that you can't take anything else for it. It's the happiest thing ever happened.
That's awesome. Well, so in functional medicine, this is where we say that you can have one problem and it create many different things. And that's where we say your body is expressing a phenotype. And so for his malabsorption, the problem is he gets chronic dry eye. So his gut being off, being a root cause of an issue, causes him to have chronic dry eye and other autoimmune issues. We have family members who have autoimmune issues, and most likely because of the gut. Because you walk into the kitchen, and what do we see in the kitchen? We see Doritos, and we see cookies, and we see all this highly processed food. People, something to think about is, if I draw a line on this piece of paper here, and this line represents all of evolutionary history of people, the food that we are eating, so the food that we're eating, I'm going to put a little mark on here, and this is just the amount of time that represents that our bodies have seen this.
Mm-hmm.
And so where do you get your microbiome from? Where are you initially inoculated, and then what do we get the support from, Ben?
Well, you get your microbiome from your mother, and then it additionally gets added on in utero during birth, and then again and then added on through colostrum, which is where you get your first IgGs, which is kind of what that oral IgG thing part is. And then you also get it from the environment around you. As a baby and growing up, you're constantly bringing in bacteria. If you have a pet, it's even better because you've got all kinds of new ones they bring into the mix. But the environment around you is where you get the rest of that, and how your body reacts to it, learns from it growing up. It sets that immune system up for what it can face in the future. Now, and there's lots of thoughts and processes now about why our microbiomes are so bad. One, because what we're eating, but two, also the world that we grow up in. We're in the last couple generations have been taught to basically kill off all the microbes around us, which it's those microbes that actually function with us. We have them on our skin, we have them in our gut, we have them everywhere. And instead of getting those microbes into a thing where we're working in synthesis with them, because in feeding them the right stuff, that they're keeping us healthy. It's a paradigm that's a little hard to get in a few quick sentences, but you are constantly evolving with your immune system. You're working in stasis, or working in conjunction with it all the time. And if we're not doing the right things to keep it happy, it's not going to be happy. And if we're feeding it high fructose corn sugar and manufactured foods and manufactured this and glyphosate, food that's contaminated with glyphosate and toxins, and eating that out of containers that have BPIs in the plastic, that's all of that stuff is basically just kind of smacking it in the face and saying, and damaging it constantly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, until it finally doesn't work properly anymore. One of my favorite things I've learned here in the last 6 months from Microbiome Labs, as I've picked up from doctors like Dr. Miller and people around me, is a big appreciation for people that take the initiative to change their lives. Because I came about to here over a long period of time, and I kind of got most of it on my own. I didn't have a very good leader. I kind of came about learning all the stuff and changing stuff on my own. I did not have a great functional medicine practitioner to tell me about a lot of stuff. I learned it on my own. But you're going to either keep damaging or bring yourself back to healthy. It's almost impossible to be healthy an entire lifestyle in our environment we live in now, just with the types of foods available, the things in the air, the things that we're eating out of, all these chemicals around us. But at some point, you've got to take it into your own hands and say, from now on moving forward, I'm going to push myself to be healthier instead of getting worse, because doing nothing is not an option. If you do nothing, you will continually get sicker and sicker. That just those risk factors of, glyphosate, your foods, your toxins, your stress, your sleeplessness, smoking excessively, drinking excessively, all those things, they're going to keep affecting you. You can cut a lot of them out, whether you're eating gluten, whether you're not eating gluten, you're either going to get worse or you're going to get better. But it does take an active choice on which way you want to go. And there's really no point in your life where you can ever say, I'm too far gone. You can always bring it back. It's just going to take a whole lot more work. Yeah. And when you've got somebody that can help you and say, okay, here's what you've already done. Now let's try and reverse that. and it's a lifestyle type of thing. It's a lifetime type of decision. That's a big deal, and it takes a lot in a society where for the last 50 years we've been told take pills so you don't have to make changes. It's a whole new concept of how to do life.
Well, we tell patients all the time, you're either getting healthier or you're not. Your food is either making you healthy or it's making you sick.
Mm,
And I'm the perfect case in point. So last month, I've probably eaten a fast food meal, which is highly unlike me.
mm,
I've eaten a fast food meal probably 2 to 3 times a week. I'll just grab a burrito, just Jones and stress.
mm-hmm.
The microbiome talks to the brain, and the brain talks to the microbiome. You've got the HPA axis, all of that stuff that happens. And so otherwise, she's making great dinners at home. We're eating Brussels sprouts and we're eating a big diverse diet. We're doing all that. One meal for about a month, 2 to 3 times a week, has taken me from the good pattern A cholesterol to the bad pattern B cholesterol, and my cholesterol tested over 300 again. And that's with 1 month,
Mm-hmm.
with one meal.
Mm-hmm.
Like, golly, it sucks.
It does. If you really think it's, everybody always says, don't make it a diet. Don't go on a diet. Do a lifestyle change, because that's the thing is you can think of it as rewarding yourself by being able to let yourself have fast food, or I'm going to reward. And you're not rewarding yourself. You're literally damaging yourself.
Oh,
like,
yeah, you're kicking yourself in the
yeah,
teeth.
nobody thinks a punch to the face is a reward, but why isn't a punch to your gut all of a sudden reward? It's just a matter of how you think about how you move forward. And it's not that you can never do anything bad again, but that's a great example of how just a little bit of what is in the food, all the processed food that's out there, can just immediately change and turn around an entire good path of stuff.
Well, that's why I have the HU58 here, because I'm going, I'm just going to go plow through again and
Mm,
go from there. So luckily she doesn't like fast food. And I'm just like, God, that would be so awesome. But I don't stress about the things she stresses about. About the only thing she doesn't have psychological stress about is gas. She can run her car on zero. She thinks vehicles run on vapor.
well,
And she doesn't stress about that, but everything else, yeah.
stress wise, that's the biggest thing. And there's so much out there on it, as they're just now realizing about the psychobiome and the connection between the gut and the brain. That's a whole nother topic, but yeah, there are specific bacteria. Most people, my best thing, the neatest thing I learned in that whole thing that I'll never forget, that in utero, in the womb, when your cells are splitting and you're becoming a baby, that your brain and your gut actually split from the same cell. And they are at no time in your entire life not connected. All the way till now, you have a nerve that goes, called the vagus nerve, that goes from your brain to your gut, and it does signal back and forth. And it makes so much more sense on why stress and stuff can be related to food, and
Yeah.
how can your food make you, be so related to your mood and your stress anxiety. And to be able to go through and find their specific bacteria, probiotics, that we went through and found a specific strain that actually talks back and forth, can change that communication to where you do not get so stressed when you have acute stressors, that you can lower the amount of anxiety that you have in your life, that you can sleep in REM and at deep.
Sign me up.
Yeah, exactly. That's huge. I've been on it now for over 2 months, and I absolutely love it.
Are you doing the cope?
I do the sleep.
You do the sleep?
I was taking L-theanine before for sleep. So the same inactive ingredients are the same, but I switch them off. If I want to sleep, I do the sleep. If I don't use it the night before, then I'll use the cope in the morning.
Well, I'm going to put up this thing for the Microbiome Labs. If you go to for those of you interested in what we are speaking about, and if with your permission, Ben, I think
Sure.
that we've been going for a half hour now. why don't we start to, I've got another talk with another rep for next week, but why don't we start to go through the Microbiome Labs products and what they do and how they help people? Because there'll be people that we want to help, but I'm just one person, and there are people who are self-initiating, that they can do the direct to patient. I'm going to put something up on the screen here now for those of you interested in what we were speaking about. Yes.
Ben, it's good to see you. I got to go get the little one.
Good to see you too.
So I'm going to put this up here, move my camera around. I tried to do the green screen because I thought I could do the cool thing with having the Integrated Health of Indiana behind me. Nah, didn't get it figured out.
You got time to figure that out for the next one. Interesting behind me.
So for those of you interested, you might ask, I've watched Karan on several things. I think you guys have a Microbiome Labs maybe backdrop. I don't know. But for those of you speaking are interested in what we're speaking about, products can be found at microbiomelabs.com. There's a side link called, I'm going to put a colon here, direct, and then the number 2, patient is what you're looking for, and you'll need a code. You can put in the code IHI, and I'll put that in parentheses. And that allows people to go in, and you can go to Microbiome Labs, and you can put in that information, and that will allow you to order and or talk about, that one's going on Facebook, but order and the things that we're talking about. And we talked about IgG 2000, and that's the product. I don't have one. I'm out of stock. IgG 2000 is what binds to the lipopolysaccharides and gets them out of the bloodstream so that you don't have like an allergic reaction, or it's a less of a reaction. And I should rephrase that, because in functional medicine, we don't like to say it's an allergic reaction. It is a sensitivity, because an actual allergic reaction would have to be an IgE response, and then you're looking at EpiPens and stuff like that. This is more of a sensitivity. LPS are always in your body. You just don't want a large portion of them getting in. And if you have a damaged gut, that allows a lot of lipopolysaccharides in, and then you can go what Ben was speaking about with the allergies or the autoimmune disease. That's called molecular mimicry. So the body will start to form its own antigens and memory B cells and stuff like that to these things, these lipopolysaccharides and stuff that get into the system. And you just don't want that. But the body's doing what the body is designed to do. If something foreign gets into the bloodstream, so if it gets past that one cell layer thick and it gets into the bloodstream, then you're going to have issues. And those issues, if you don't need a doctor, that's great. Go do the research like Ben did and start taking control of your own health. Because I tell you what, a pill or a potion, not going to get you in the long run. Not going to be what happens if all of these shipping containers, wherever they're at, stay out there at sea, and we can't get the medicines that we get from India and China. That's where most of our or generics, most of our generics come from China, and they come from India. And if we can't bring them in, and you're depending on XYZ medication and you can't get it, you're stuck. And I am all about self-reliance.
Yep. Speaking of, just so you know as well, you had mentioned that the Mega IgG 2000 should be back in next week. Mega Biotic will be in this week. Restore Flora and FODMate were both back in stock as of last Friday. And then Wheat Rescue and Mega Guard will be the last, but those will all be back. Everything should be back and go and online by the 15th. So we're looking at.
And for people that want to know, we're actually going to go through these products.
Mhm.
I do use the Microbiome Labs with my patients to actually get in here and do these things. If people order the Microbiome Lab using the IHI code, that's actually linked to me, and I will do I'll get on there and go through the microbiome with you and the things that you need to do. It's not that you have to actually be a patient here for those that want to do this, but we also do a lot. I have a lot of patients that are functional medicine patients that I do one-on-one. We text, we call. But if you buy a microbiome assessment, then the fee that's in that includes a report of findings with me. And I do consult the gurus at Microbiome Labs. You get a really beautiful printout. I don't have one of the printouts here that's HIPAA compliant right now. It's got names on it. So,
yeah.
Um,
I highly suggest that doing the BiomeFX functional microbiome analysis, finding out where your gut is, going through that process with Dr. Miller of correcting the dysbiosis in your gut, improving the resilience of your gut, improving the resilience of your immune system, and be able to track that by doing a follow-up one so you can see all the process. You can actually watch and you'll see that all the things he's telling you to do, you can actually look and see the results of those as they happen and watch your body getting back to healthy again. It's an amazing process to go through, one that I would definitely suggest anyone go through, and one that Dr. Miller's uniquely good at or qualified to help you lead you through.
Do you have actually, on that note, did you talk to the people at corporate about doing a discount on that second one if they do it in close proximity?
We did. We did talk about that. I'll have to talk to you about it offline. They've got a different solution, but we'll talk to you offline about that after this.
Well, everybody, we went a little long, but I like this stuff. Ben's a great guy. We have a lot of fun when he comes in and we talk about things, talk about patients, and look at products. And I do use the products. I'm actually going to start using the ZenBiome Sleep and Cope myself, because when I get stressed, and I'm human, stress happens. I'm going to see if that can keep me from my bad habits or help me modulate them. So,
yep.
Thank you all. And Ben, stay on here. I will close this out, and that should allow us to stay live with each other.
Okay. Sounds good.